So, Jarvis, to call it a must win is probably an understatement,
Yeah.
but Hawks are back in must win territory. Yes, it is only game two of this opening round series against the Celtics. But when you get blown out, and don't let that 13-point win by the Celtics fool you into thinking it wasn't a blowout, because at one point, Celtics led by 32 points, 30 points at the half of
Half,
game
yeah.
one. So it is important to know that, yes, this is one of those games where the Hawks have to try their best to steal one. The question becomes this. Yes, it is obvious that one of the things they're going to need to do, Jarvis, is shoot better from the perimeter. You cannot go 17% from beyond the arc and expect to beat really any team in the NBA, to be quite honest, these days.
Right.
Secondly, if you're going to do that, you can't also lose your identity on defense and get out rebounded by about 15 rebounds.
Yeah.
But when you look into the numbers, whether you look into the numbers, Jarvis, or whether you look at a particular player or a particular group of players, just give me one thing that maybe you saw that was good in that game one that you're like, okay, if I could just see more of that, maybe the Hawks have a shot tonight.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, I probably have to do some dissertational research on that one, right? To try to find something good from that past game. Because I think, let me say this. One thing that I thought that was a positive, it was the fact that, Bogey started off shooting terribly. But you start to see him kind of catch fire like a shooter does. Like, a shooter's going to continue to shoot. Like, guys like Bogey, if he's struggling, like, I'm sitting at the bench, man, keep shooting, bro. Because at some point, he's going to start making those shots. And I think that you saw him do that whenever Hawks got it down to 12 points. And obviously now, the Celtics went back on a run like we expected them to, and eventually it ended up closing the game out. But I think that there's a lesson to be learned with what happened with Bo. Is if you are going to struggle, there are going to have to be some aspects of your game that just they're going to have to pick up, right? Like, if you're not shooting the rock well, like, you can't afford to kind of say take it easy on the defensive side of the court. Like, that's just, it's unacceptable. Like JC and DeAndre, y'all, if you're going to struggle on offense, lock down on defense, and eventually that defensive lockdown will lead to points. And we've seen this team do that before. Guys like DeJounte Murray has normally lead the way when it comes to things like that. So, and taking chances on defense and going for, being aggressive, with his on-ball defending. So those are some of the things that I feel like the Hawks need to do, right? Like, and from a positive standpoint, like, if you're going to struggle, it happens. Like, 3-point shooting team, like I said, we mentioned yesterday, it seems like every team in the NBA is a 3-point shooting team. So, I don't think we have to even point that out anymore. So when you're struggling from the 3-point line, make sure that you lock down on defense and really focus, because good defense, or good to great defense, can lead to some solid offense.
And I love that you pointed out that Bogdan Bogdanovic did what a shooter does, which is you just have to keep shooting until the
Absolutely.
shots fall. And I
Right.
also think that one of the goods was points in the paint. I mean, it was 54 for the Celtics, 54 for the Hawks. Exploit that. Go back in. That is maybe the one area where, not to say that the Celtics aren't solid with the likes of Robert Williams or Al Horford, but it is to say that you can compete with them.
Right.
Obviously, points in the paint show that you can. And on the offensive rebounding boards, you were close enough. Now, you should have had a little bit more of a gap, because that's where you pulled up and got yourself off the canvas the last 20 plus games of the season to even get into or stay in the play-in tournament, right?
Right.
So just go there and exploit. I want to see more points in the paint. And Jarvis, not just from the bigs, backcourt. If the three isn't falling for you, be aggressive and drive the lane. Get some floaters in there, get some contact, and get in there and
Do
be
something.
physical. Yeah,
Just
right.
fight.
Right.
Come on, somebody.
Right.
Do
Yeah.
something.
Right. Or just, to me, that's an area where maybe the Hawks sneakily had a solid game, and maybe they can build upon that from game one. Now, the obvious is what you mentioned as well in terms of what they can do better that we saw from game one to game two. And that is, yeah, absolutely. You have got to get it from the 3 and the 4 position. And
Yeah.
honestly, okay, John Collins, it could be you. DeAndre Hunter, it could be you, but I don't really care at this point. I don't care if it's Big Bay, AJ Griffin, Jalen Johnson. I don't care if you want to play kind of small ball style or whatever Quin Snyder is dialing up, if you will. All I know is that Clint Capella is playing a decent or played a decent, solid game on Saturday, right?
Yeah.
So if he could just play just a bit better, just step his game up ever so slightly, if we can get some more out of that backcourt, that's fine. That's still going to be Trae stepping up and DeJounte stepping up. I don't necessarily think that we're going to see, I don't know, Aaron Holiday or Bogdan Bogdanovich just do wonders. So that's going to mean Trae and DeJounte step up. But with that 3-4, Jarvis, you hit on something. It's got to be Dre and JC, but I'm going to hit on the other piece. If it's not, Quin Snyder's got to go to his bench and say, you guys got to give me something. Double
Yeah.
O, give me something.
Yeah.
AJ, I'm going to insert you this time because he wasn't inserted in the lineup in game one. Give me something. Like they've got to be ready to go in the event that the starters just don't give them what they need. Now, speaking of, this was something that Landry Fields somewhat alluded to in an interview this morning with the morning shift on 92.9 The Game. He talked about the fact that, there are some opportunities there because some of these guys have never been in a playoff situation and certainly not in the TD Garden. So it may be something where not so much that it was a focus situation, but maybe there are some things that they can kind of tweak and improve upon, and it's an opportunity for them to learn and grow. Now, that is not verbatim. That is giving you guys the Cliff Notes version of what he said. But what I heard in some of those comments was, maybe we are still understanding that this is still an audition for next season. This is still an evaluation for who could potentially contribute to this team next season. That said, looks like Quin Snyder's been doing a little bit of evaluating who could be on his bench for the coaching staff next season in the form of one Mike Brey. Now, most recently, I believe The Athletic reported it, but Pete
Yeah.
Thamel reported it a couple of weeks ago as well. And then a few weeks before that, the Notre Dame Insider actually alluded to it when the thought was that Brey was going to get that job at USF. It didn't pan out for him. Then he thought about TV, but he was also maybe eyeing this position because of his relationship with Quin Snyder. But my question to you is this: very interesting move by Quin Snyder. What do you think is the primary reason, other than their longstanding relationship, that Quin Snyder might have thought, hey, I'd like to bring Brey to this bench?
I think it's a matter of bringing in people that he knows the most. Because let's keep it funky, right? We can go here real quick. Like, more than likely, 95% of the guys that are on that bench right now are probably not going to be here next year. And I think that, especially Jamil McMillan, you know what I mean? So it's just awkward, at this point. So I think that, getting his own guys in here, getting guys that are familiar with how he wants to do things. And to be honest with you, Brey is a guy that can kind of deliver the message as well because he coached Quin Snyder, and Snyder is a guy that has the ultimate respect for a guy who coached him because, hey, he coached him, what was it, 87? When Quin Snyder was a player at Duke, who was an absolute hooper, by the way. I don't know you guys. Hey, Snyder was a hooper. He was an All-American. Dude was the real deal back in the day. So I think I'm not too surprised that he's become the type of coach that he has become. Being a former player and being able to having coming through up the ranks, as an assistant coach and being able to establish a lot of relationships because he's a relationship guy. Like, dig into Quin Snyder for those you don't know. This guy is a relationship guy, and when you have guys that can move men like he can, and also teach men like he can, like I'm really excited about this particular regime and this coaching staff, and he's starting off pretty well with getting a guy like Mike Brey and bringing him into the fold.
Yeah, I think it's a solid move because he is someone that Quin Snyder can trust. So I think that's a piece of it. Another piece is he's fresh off out of the college ranks, and
Right.
the Hawks at their core are still a very young team. So there may be some connectivity, some learnings that maybe he can give because Quin Snyder is very much removed from the college basketball game. So I think that could help out. And then I think about someone like Pat Connaughton, right, who has a lot of the fundamentals that you want to see in your players because and high basketball IQ, I always
Yeah. Oh yeah, for
so
sure.
a part of that can certainly be attributed to Pat Connaughton, but a part of that can also be contributed to Mike Brey as well. So I think that could be possibly something that you can look to the kind of player that Mike Brey has cultivated in someone like Pat Connaughton, and can he bring some of that to the table for the Hawks as well? So yeah, I think it could be a solid move for the Hawks overall. We'll see. What a solid move, I believe, was never quite solid was the move of Kevin Herter. You guys know that we watch the NBA playoffs in their entirety. So we're not just
Yes.
looking at what Hawks Celtics are doing, but we're watching the other teams. And because one of our guys, or one of our buddies to the show, Brian Gephardt, is now a program director out in Sacktown. So we've been in touch with him just asking about the hoopla in Sacramento. It is absolutely bonkers. Of course, the Kings pull off another win against the Warriors last night. They're now up 2-0. But Jarvis, all I kept thinking of was 15 points, 6 of 14 shooting from the field, 5 rebounds, 2 blocks, and a steal. Man, do we miss Red Velvet or what?
Yes. Because when you think about the previous regime and Travis Lane, the one thing that general managers don't do, or president of basketball operations, or the people who make the big boy decisions when it comes to the roster, they don't get rid of guys that they cultivated, that they brought up, because nobody saw Kevin Huerter becoming the player that he became when he was drafted by the Hawks. Nobody saw, I know I talk a lot of trash about him, when John Collins, nobody thought he was going to be the player to be able to get a $25 million annual contract year over year. So that's why, when that trade went down, something was funky. Something was up. Something wasn't particularly right when you have him trade one of his guys, because those are the guys that are staples that you build a team around. Nobody thought that Kevin Huerter was on the trading block, because you've heard John Collins been on the trading block for 3 years now, but he was still on the team. But when you hear the trade go down and there was no rumors leading up to it, it kind of had to be an abrupt decision. And I feel like wholeheartedly that wasn't Travis Slank's decision. And I think right now, and we know that more than likely they had to trade him in order to bring DeJounte Murray into the fold or make the money work. But you just got to look back at it and just say, you know what? He didn't have that great of a shooting night, but he was finding a way to be effective on the court to the tune of a plus 16 and plus minus on the court, T. That's what we've been talking about. Hey, if you're not going to shoot well, we get it, but you got to be effective at some point, because otherwise you just can't be on the court.
Yeah. And of course, yeah, he's known for his perimeter shooting. So it's interesting
Yes.
to see that he was 6 of 14 from the field. But like you said, looking across his entire stat line, it's a stat line that's very, very consistent with his stat line for the entire season, except, of course, his 3-point stat, of course, is decidedly higher. But
Right.
that said, when you're looking across the entire season, the entirety of the season, for the Hawks, and you look in that particular category of 3-point production, especially in the
They
second unit,
struggle.
whom you can easily insert into the first unit, you really, really do miss a Kevin Huerter. And of course, we congratulate him because he's one of the guys who is truly a fan favorite, a media favorite as well. He got an award for being so friendly and so amenable to the local media, but proud of that guy. But certainly when you see someone like him doing what he's doing in Sacramento, it definitely makes you look at the Hawks and say, wow, that's probably one of the areas that's going to need to be addressed in the offseason, whether you do it in free agency or whether you do it in the first round of the draft. You're going to have to get somebody who can be another sharp shooter to complement Bogdan Bogdanovic off the bench. But we know our everydayers, we want to hear from you guys. I mean, have you guys been watching Kevin Huerter and seeing what he's doing out on the court, seeing what he's doing on the West Coast? Have you guys been watching the rest of these NBA finals and kind of looking and saying, boy, sure would be nice if the Warriors didn't give Klay Thompson that max contract that he's looking for. Does he possibly want to come here? You all know that conversation that had taken place about a year or two ago. You guys want to have that conversation again? Continue being our everydayers. We appreciate you guys from being with us from day one and for this being your first listen of the day and maybe your first look as well if you go to YouTube and check us out. But of course, wherever you get your podcast, don't forget to tell a friend. It's not too late for them to become everydayers as well.